Okay, it's a lengthy one, so bear with me. This situation unfolded around 2 weeks ago, and I've shifted from complete trust in her to profound doubt. I met my wife when I was 19, and our love blossomed rapidly. She had a 4-month-old child from a previous relationship, and the father hasn't been in the picture since I've known her. Despite my childhood dream of being a father, a genetic disorder led us to opt for adoption, which suited me just fine. Since then, we've been living like an ordinary family every day. We got married last year. While she wasn't particularly close to her family, she did have a pair of cousins she was somewhat connected to. I enjoyed getting to know them, and they seemed like decent people. She mentioned that one of them, let's call him Max, tried to kiss her when they were 12 and 13, but she brushed it off as him being a foolish kid. We see him every Christmas, and he appears to be a normal guy. I liked him because compared to her other family members who are quite formal, he's down to earth. Recently, they've reconnected and attended a few family functions. Since we share one car and I needed it for work, he picked her up for these occasions. Nothing seemed unusual about it. After all, they are cousins. Her behavior didn't exhibit any obvious changes. However, randomly, one night as I was watching TV, she came in and commented on my friendship with a female colleague from work. We're an open couple, typically unfazed by such things. For instance, she might remark on an attractive guy and make some sort of lewd remark, and I'd think nothing of telling her this woman was the new hire in the office. She didn't accuse me of cheating, but it felt like she was on the verge of it, which was a first. I bring this up because I've read that cheaters sometimes project accusations onto their partners. These family outings were legitimate. The entire family shares pictures of them on Facebook, and my wife sends photos from the events. There were 2 of these gatherings, and each time my wife came home, she seemed robotic. Our intimate life appeared normal, if not quieter than usual, but due to her depression, she occasionally becomes distant. When I asked if she was doing all right, she attributed it to her mood fluctuations. 2 weeks ago, she left for work, and since it was my day off, I puttered around the house, dropped our son off at school, and came home to check my email. On Facebook, I noticed a message from her cousin. We had recently discussed going to see a farm team baseball game, so I assumed he was getting back to me. The message read, "I'd like to see you on your knees." I was confused until I realized my wife was still signed in, and he was addressing her. I wanted to confront him. I immediately rushed to read through their chat log, discovering his inappropriate advances, despite her repeated statements like, "But I'm married," and "No, I'm married." These refusals seemed hesitant, as if she were saying no out of obligation rather than desire. I was disgusted and utterly shocked. However, since none of them mention anything happening yet, and she is denying him albeit kindly, I can't exactly say she's cheating. When she got home and our son was put to bed, I confronted her about the situation. She instantly broke down into hysterics and tears, saying things like, "I didn't do anything. I didn't know how to tell you. I was just hoping he stopped." Both of us have suffered childhood ravistation from family friends, attended years of therapy for it, and for that reason, we have very good communication skills regarding comfort, boundaries, and expressing ourselves about unwanted advances. I love her, and I wanted to believe her, but the way she didn't tell me and acted seemingly normal leads me to believe something else was going on. I told her I believed her and asked if I could message him to tell him to back off and express my disgust, or if she preferred to handle it herself. Initially, she expressed that she would tell him that I knew and not to contact her, but her resolve cracked as she was confident this would just stop. I was furious about that but didn't express it and told her that knowing she wasn't going to, I was going to give him a piece of my mind. This is my wife, and if she's being intimidated, I will end it. And if she's not being intimidated, she's cheating on me. So I messaged him. He saw it but made no reply. The wife insists I should have allowed her to handle the situation, but I explained there was no way I could stay silent in the face of this. She seemed to grasp my perspective and eventually acknowledged that confronting him was probably the right course, as she didn't know how to handle it herself. Everything appeared to return to normal, but 3 days later, I come home to find her in tears. When I inquire about the cause, she says, "It's Max. You should have let me handle it. I messaged him yesterday, and he won't talk to me." We revisited the conversation about my refusal to passively endure someone intimidating my wife. During the discussion, she gave me a look, brief but telling. leaving me with the impression that she didn't perceive it as pastoring. We concluded the conversation, agreeing that I had handled it the way any man would. 2 days later, I'm getting to bed late, around 2 a.m., as I was finishing up some work. I overhear her on the phone with someone laughing. This is unusual. She claimed it was her mom discussing something related to our kid's birthday, but I doubted the explanation. At this point, I've decided to play ignorant to observe the situation from a more comfortable vantage point. The next day, she's crying again, and I've reached my limit. She's been emotionally unstable for 2 weeks now. When I inquire if it's about Max again, she reveals that she tried to call and apologize for not handling the situation herself, but he still isn't talking to her. I admit it, I snapped. I told her that either he was abusing her or she was cheating on me, and I caught them. I'll be on the couch tonight, obviously. I wanted to believe her, but I'm not naive. I'm essentially lying here, waiting for some solid truth because it's increasingly feeling like something is amiss, and if that's the case, I'm about to go 95,000 megaton nuclear on the both of them. She goes to work in 6 hours. I plan to apologize for my outburst and ask her to sit down and talk tonight. It's Sunday, and our son typically stays the night with my parents every other Sunday. I'm not proud of it, but I believe it's in my best interest to do some snooping. If I find nothing, we will discuss what happened, when it started, how I can support her, and what steps we should take moving forward. I love her, and the idea that she's being intimidated by someone who should love her breaks my heart. However, if I discover something questionable or learn that she was complicit in any way, I'm ending the relationship immediately. I don't believe in marriage counseling for instances of infidelity, and even if I did incest, there is no way I could look at her the same again. Update. I didn't sleep at all last night, and when she woke up, I prepared breakfast. I acknowledged that I shouldn't have exploded and suggested we sit down tonight to discuss things. Strangely, she agreed as if she wasn't initially upset, admitting she had likely been acting poorly. I emphasized that the aggravation she faced was particularly challenging since he is a family member, and she appeared to agree. Initially reluctant to snoop, the advice from many here convinced me to check her emails. Despite her composed demeanor this morning, I proceeded. The disgust, hatred, and anger I feel are beyond expression, leading to an inevitable divorce. An email titled "Yummy" revealed a picture of her cousin with nut on his face. The exchanges detailed his encounters with random gay men, referencing past reproductive experiences together, including a picture of an accessory for reproductive body part captioned, "I still have our old friend." The subsequent repugnant conversation portrayed her in a dominating manner, insulting his reproductive body part size. Analyzing the dates, I realized this transpired a year ago. As I continued reading, it became evident, at least from the text, that they used to engage frequently but stopped after our marriage. We were together for several years before getting married. Later, she invoked the "I'm married" excuse. But it seems like it's his kink to be told he can't touch her anymore, which he probably enjoys. Raising her child, I feel betrayed after 6 years of adjusting my work schedule and passing up better-paying jobs to ensure I can watch him. Overwhelmed, I went outside, called my brother, explained the situation, and asked him to hold on to my weapon temporarily. Despite not being a violent person, my mental state fluctuates between wanting to damage him and myself. I won't act on these impulses, but I fear a breakdown and can't trust myself to behave rationally. After this, I'm packing my clothes and checking into a hotel. These conversations have been printed, copies sent to myself, and when I have time, I'll uncover more evidence. Bought a pack of cigarettes despite quitting 4 years ago. Now, I must schedule an appointment at an STD clinic because, according to their explicit conversations, part of his obsession involves unprotected lovemaking with other men. I've never used protection with my soon-to-be ex-wife due to her contraceptive device. Now I face months of anxiety awaiting AIDS test results. Knowing his work schedule, possibly due to my past employment at the same company, I contemplate driving down to see his wife with evidence in hand. There's no fixing this, no therapy, no hope, and I have no interest in entertaining an apology. I'm filing for divorce, and she will receive nothing. Despite not feeling depressed or sad, I harbor a hot ball of rage in my chest, momentarily cooled by cigarettes. I can't be near her or him, and though I asserted I'm not violent, I find myself yearning to confront both of them physically. Regarding the family outings, they were genuine. The entire family posts pictures on Facebook, and my wife sends photos from these events. There were 2 such occasions, and each time she returned home, she seemed robotic. Our intimate life appeared normal, if not quieter than usual, but due to her depression, she occasionally becomes distant. When I asked if she was doing all right, she attributed it to her mood fluctuations. Update. My stepson is not a result of incest. He bears a striking resemblance to his biological father. A paternity test was necessary to establish child support, and once confirmed, his father disappeared, having been heard from only once in the past 4 years. The past couple of days have been an emotional roller coaster. In summary, I discovered that my wife has been cheating on me with her cousin Max for an extended period. Given the duration, it might as well be considered her cheating on Max with me. I consulted a lawyer initially, and then went directly to Max's home to speak with his wife. Understandably, she was heartbroken and disgusted by the incest revelation. During our conversation, I also informed her that Max was bragging to my wife about engaging in unprotected encounters with random internet men, sharing explicit photos with nut on his face. Despite my advice against it, she insisted on seeing the pictures and was deeply affected. Max, identifying as buyer productive, frequently engaged with random guys. His wife believed he hadn't done this in well over a year, allowing him occasional outings to get it out of his system. Afterward, I stayed the night in a hotel, where I spoke with my mother, brother, and father. My mother-in-law left numerous voicemails, begging me to discuss the situation. Ignoring them, I received multiple calls from my wife, which I chose not to answer. Presuming she knew about my documentation efforts, she refrained from sending texts, a strategy I would employ in her position. Eventually, I called her and kept it brief, stating we would talk the next day. Upon returning home, my wife was emotionally distraught, attempting to hug me, but I declared it over. She vehemently denied any infidelity, suggesting I misinterpreted things, blaming Max's wife for spreading rumors due to their mutual hatred. At this point, I realized my wife thought I'd learned about the affair from someone else, unaware of my independent discovery. I then presented the evidence, papers containing explicit photos of Max titled Yummy, and a picture of a large accessory for reproductive body part labeled Our Old Friend. The documents revealed her engaging in a dominatrix role, instructing him in a power play scenario. She even asked him to send pictures after encounters, which was stomach-churning. Despite my openness to kinky activities, she shifted from sadness to explosive anger and complete hysterics when realizing I had discovered the affair and informed Max's wife. Her outburst included statements like, "You should have talked to me first," and "She's telling everyone, this will ruin me." I exploded, reminding her that I had read a year's worth of texts and emails, and she never once asked him to stop. I called her a degenerate, expressed concern about potential AIDS exposure, and despite her crying, declared our impending divorce. Subsequently, I called her father, urging him to come to my house as she shouldn't be alone in that state. I returned to my hotel room and saw that Max's wife had been texting me. She had done some intense digging on her own and found discussions about reproductive encounters they had from 2010 on freaking MySpace. She told me early on in our relationship that he once tried to kiss her at 13, while they were actually freaking at 16 or 15 or during a time where MySpace was still widely being used. I'll admit it, this seeing it went on that far back was finally what broke me. I'm not big on emotional displays, but I broke down crying in front of his wife. She cried too. When that was over, I took her to the lawyer I'm seeing, and now one of his partners will be handling her divorce. Through all this, Max has been panicking and crying, trying to find out where his wife is trying to talk to me. Still, after all this evidence, trying to ensure this is all some big misunderstanding. It turns out that Max and ex-wife live in a house owned by Max's parents, and they have come down hard against their son, telling him he cannot stay there anymore, and apologizing to their Dill and saying she's welcome to stay with their grandchild in that house for as long as she wants. He's basically disowned. Max's father even got it in his head somehow that Max was ravishing my wife as a child, and that is why she is doing what she is doing today. She is his favorite niece, basically a second daughter, so Max in effect is on the lam because his old man wants him dead. My father, unprompted and wanting to help me, assured me he'd pay my hotel for the week. Today I told my boss point blank, no filter, exactly what's happened, and that I'm taking 2 weeks to sort my life out. He remarked about how poopty his divorce was and told me to take whatever time I needed bottle fed and that he'll just tell everyone on the floor I've got a sick parent or something, which was sweet of him. Lying down in my hotel room, now missing a stepson I'll probably never see again. I raised him for 6 years, changed his diapers, bottle fed him at 3 a.m., took time out of work when he was sick, waited on him hand and foot after a nasty fall that broke his arm so his mother could sleep because she was working in the morning. The rest of this world could burn away to freaking ash, and I wouldn't blink or care, but the thought of never seeing him again rips away at me like nothing else. I need therapy. Gonna take a heck of a lot of talking to get through this. I'm not a self-destruction risk, so no worries there. I'm an atheist, so this is the only life I got. If I end it, that's it, LOL. Talking to my lawyer on the phone later, and we'll be meeting up with Max's SO again, because apparently there's more I don't know. Got a doctor's appointment tomorrow, and then 6 darn months of waiting for results. Update. Today is the day we've chosen to inform my son about the unfolding changes. It's not a conversation either of us looks forward to, but it's inevitable. Last night, I had a phone conversation with my soon-to-be ex, STBX, and her tone surprised me. Initially accepting of the divorce, she didn't resist. During the call, she teared up, attempting to explain her relationship with her cousin and insisting that during the years we were together, it was only random dirty texts and nothing physical occurred. I sense a storm approaching because now she insists on having my car. She argues that since I work 20 minutes from our current residence and she works an hour away, it's necessary. Considering this old rust bucket has only 2 good years left, I'm contemplating giving it up and getting a new car, as I'll need one anyway. However, I fear that acquiescing to this now might set a precedent for my entire life. Through this, I've realized I don't feel like leaving my apartment. Knowing she's moving in with her folks, I might wait until she's gone, likely in a week according to Facebook, and then discuss the situation with my landlord. Due to COVID, he's had trouble filling some units, so he might welcome me sticking around. I had breakfast with my dad. While he approached the topic lightly, he essentially advised against writing anything that would obligate me to stay in my stepson's life. Despite not dismissing my stepson, he always makes time for him and spoils him on holidays, birthdays, and with random toys. He's a proud grandpop. His reasoning is to wait and see how my STBX behaves and if it aligns with what I want in my life. He reminded me that I passed on the opportunity to go to school to become a family man, and the family wouldn't hold it against me if I chose not to be a father anymore. They love my son, but they don't want to see me fall on my sword by tying myself to that crazy family for life. More or less, they'll support me no matter what I decide. Maybe consulting my therapist in 3 weeks will change my perspective, but currently I'm adamant about remaining a father. Afterwards, I took Sherry to meet with Max. I didn't accompany her, as it might lead to trouble. Instead, I hung out in the Sonic drive-thru, listening to music, buying drinks a couple of times to justify my presence, and waiting for her to text me to be picked up. When it was over, she was somewhat worse off. Max blamed my STBX for the fact that things didn't end years ago, claiming the guys he alleged to have crazy hookups with were part of a fabricated dirty story with my STBX. If he's telling the truth, it was just the one guy, his boyfriend, and he made up the rest as part of this dirty story. It sounds questionable, but for some reason it seems true to me. Sherry was devastated, mostly because he appeared sleep-deprived, didn't acknowledge his daughter, and hadn't said anything about her until she brought up the subject. She was visibly upset, and I brought her home. However, she did well at keeping it together for the baby. Not wanting to leave her in that state, I stayed and helped prepare dinner. I showed her how to make improvised garlic bread and pasta. I learned that she sings a French language song to her daughter, and I was a little smitten with that. However, I also noticed that Sherry has some of my son's hand-me-down baby furniture, which truly highlighted how messed up this situation is. When I left, we shared a prolonged parting hug, no words. I received a kiss on the cheek, and I kind of rode that high for the rest of the night. The enormity of my life right now is challenging to grasp. I didn't think it was possible to be filled with such hate and anger while also feeling that fluffy. Update. It's been almost 3 weeks since my D-Day, and over a month since my life took a drastic turn. I haven't delved into the state of my marriage in previous posts, but for today's therapeutic typing session, I'll touch on it briefly. If this is your first time reading my posts, the TLDR is as follows. I accidentally discovered on Facebook that my soon-to-be ex-wife was involved in a reproductive affair with her cousin, Max. I informed Max's wife about the situation, leading her to expose our partners. Throughout this, Max's wife and I started casually dating due to discovering a mutual attraction. I filed for divorce yesterday, heading to the courthouse to speak with the bailiff or sheriff on the other side of the counter and complete the necessary paperwork. My STBX and I, aiming for a quick resolution, decided against involving lawyers and agreed on the division of assets without the need for mediation. We attempted to serve her at the courthouse immediately after I submitted the paperwork, aiming to avoid law enforcement serving her at her home or workplace. I'm usually level-headed, and surprisingly, my STBX, who is not typically calm, is equally eager to conclude this chapter. However, it turns out she can't be served the way we planned, leading me to drive her home to her folks. Despite all this, I inquired about how things were going. Her facade crumbled a bit, and through tears, she admitted she's doing fine with me gone. She only feels bad when my stepson asks for me or expresses sadness about my absence. She confessed that she's been unhappy in our marriage since before we got married. It wasn't resentment or hatred. She just fell out of love with me. Our bed life, while both of us are active and reproductive, lost its synchronicity a while ago. We both knew it, and we had several conversations in our marriage about it. I like to pursue, hate to be chased. She loves to pursue, hates to be chased. Something was bound to break, and we had several talks about this. For a while, we switched roles so we could both get what we wanted, but it eventually turned into me sacrificing my reproductive desires to only have lovemaking in the ways she wanted. Some things she wanted me to do, I never liked and never improved at, and seemingly out of spite, she rejected the things I excelled at. Meanwhile, she rarely, if ever, fulfilled my requests as time went on. In the middle of our relationship, we had a female live-in roommate with whom we shared mutual attraction. Under strict guidelines and rules, she became someone we frequently engaged with, providing a temporary fix. Despite our reproductive issues, the STBX and I were a good team, excelling in financial communication and parenting, always presenting a united front. We enjoyed the same movies, both being artistically inclined. I'm a writer, and she's an illustrator. We had a myriad of commonalities that made us best friends and a great team. But the reproductive problems persisted. While the third person was in the relationship, that tension disappeared, and we worked seamlessly together as our frustrations and needs were met by a third party. Eventually, this third woman moved out, ending things on good terms, primarily because she wanted a boyfriend, and no guy would go in for a setup like that. Around this period, Max and Sherry moved into Max's parents' second home. They had been residing in Sherry's home state for a few years until he lost his job. According to the STBX, Max re-established contact with her during this time. Initially, they met up as ordinary cousins, but one day, she chose to share her frustrations, likely an invitation, about her bed life, leading to an affair. They would only meet up around family gatherings, using excuses to disappear. I recall instances when I couldn't find her. We got married around this time, so I can only assume it happened at our own wedding. At this point, I really don't feel like listening to this, and the STBX mentions that she is now seeing a therapist and wants to treat me like her priest in confession. Everything concerning their affair I was hearing for the first time. I guess it's good that I know the truth, but since it impacts my life in no way, there's really no point for me to be hearing it. She also tells me that the out-of-state aunt who died, and she cried for a week over, was actually her crying after Sherry called her to happily inform her she was pregnant. That means at one point, I was actively holding my wife and comforting her as she cried over another man. I feel more betrayed now than when I discovered the texts. This revelation follows a weekend where I got to spend 2 whole days alone with my stepson. I had such a good time, and he did too, as it's the longest time we've been together since D-Day. He's 6 and likes Minecraft, so I got a console version for split-screen play. He mentioned missing me but loves seeing his grandparents every day. They spoil him. So, after this great weekend of video games and playing catch, typical dad stuff, I'm really positive about staying a dad until she drops all this new info on me. I've got to be real. I'm finding the whole idea of having to be around this woman for the rest of my life, voluntarily, something I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do. As a parent, I should be able to get over my own issues and keep a level head for the sake of the child, but given the circumstances, throwing in the towel becomes a more and more attractive idea. That, more than losing my wife, more than the betrayal, breaks my heart. I'm going to see him again Friday night, and going to see if I can still fight through this. On the Sherry front, I'll keep it brief as this is already way too long. Max stopped calling or taking calls from her 4 days ago, and it turns out he's moved in with his boyfriend. He has a boyfriend. She's going to file for divorce before the week is over and consider her next move. Her brother arrives in 2 days to talk with her and stay for the week. With Max's parents' permission, we've changed the locks on the house because, as rumor has it, Max has been using what? I don't know. But all the same, better to be safe. I installed a new chain and a deadbolt. He's never been known to be violent, but he's never been known to vanish for days on end, with the rumor being he's into medications now. When it comes to my relationship with Sherry, we are quietly pursuing a romantic relationship. We're both equally aware that we could just be dealing with our trauma, and these feelings might not be 100% real or lasting. But if I can be allowed to be vain for a moment, it's the best lovemaking I've had in my life. I've never been more physically attracted to any of my previous partners, and I find myself at work daydreaming about her toward the end of the workday. I don't think I've ever had such a strong want for someone before, and all told, she tells me it's something mutual. I've been back to work this week, and both days she stopped by to bring me dinner she made, and that's darn near the cutest thing anyone's ever done for me. Once again, I feel like life is beating the poop out of me at the same time everything is going right.